Welcome back to With the First Pick on this edition of the Perfect Fix. I'm going to fix the Chicago Bears. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's former Titans GM Rand Carthon. And as always, before we get rolling here, Bears fans, let us know in the comments what you think the biggest need is facing this team as we head into the offseason. We'd like hearing from you guys, so let us know, and I'll read the comments. All right, Rand, the Bears got the head coaching hire right with Ben Johnson. The team went 11-6 prior to last season. The last winning season in Chicago was 2018. Matt Nagy's first year there. He was coach of the year that year. Mitch Trubisky was in year 2 as a quarterback. A lot has changed in those 7 years. So, knowing all that, there's some things to address personnel-wise on both sides of the ball. But otherwise, it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot to fix, right?
No, I mean it's not. I think the biggest thing they have to fix is this salary cap space, which we'll get to. But man, if you're going in, I know, and I didn't always understand the fodder that was surrounding Caleb Williams coming into the season, just in terms of, oh, he's not that good, or I never bought into it personally.
Right.
Just because I mean the kid is supremely talented, but man, watching the Chicago Bears play, and it was one of those things where every time they got the ball and needed a score to either tie the game or win the game, you felt like they were going to do whatever they needed, right? Because Caleb just gave you that belief, and we saw that amazing play he made in the playoffs. That's who he's become. Now the trick of it is you don't want him to rest on, making these heroic throws constantly, right? Because if you're looking there at the graphic that Striker put up, his completion percentage did drop, right? So we got to get that number back up. But the biggest difference in all of that was him being sacked 68 times versus 24 times. Now, some of those 68 that he took as a rookie were on him, just like I'm sure some of these of the 24 and 2025 were on him as well, just knowing when to get rid of the football, which I think as the season progressed, he got better at getting rid of the football. But it goes to what you spoke about in the commitment they made for fixing the offensive line, being able to make offseason trades to go get Joe Tooney, who I believe was a first-team All-Pro, a Pro Bowler, Jonah Jackson, being able to go get him, and just making all the necessary moves to protect your investment in your number 1 draft pick, which was Caleb Williams, and then bringing in Ben Johnson. And we could talk about Ben Johnson ad nauseum and the great job he's did, not only on the football field, but off the football field in establishing that culture. But I always want to say, when I think about this Chicago Bears team, the coaching staff that he was able to put together. It was just a great mixture of veteran guys that have played, and guys that he knew the players would respond positively to. And so not only did he do a great job, but the staff that he built around him, bringing in a Dennis Allen, keeping Richard Hightower as the special teams coordinator, bringing in an Antoine Randall, Al Harris, Eric Bieniemy was on that staff. You just have a ton of guys with a ton of experience that are relatable and able to reach the players in the locker room.
Yep. Agree with all that. I think they had 7 comeback wins. The Bears did. I might be underselling it, but to your point, I think a lot of the inconsistencies with Caleb came early in the season, as you noted, but also early in the game, and then he seemed to get comfortable and then start slinging it. That throw against the Rams is one of the best throws that I can remember. Maybe I'm sort of just living in the moment, but that was bonkers. More bonkers. The Rams won that game, but we can talk about that later. All right, the Bears are number 26 available salary cap space. You sort of hinted on it there, Rand. They'll have $10.7 million they need to clear to be compliant. I think that's right. Yep, there we go. So let's talk about some of the names like we always do of guys who are soon to be free agents and what we're doing with them once we get cap compliant there. Producer Stryker has the graphic. Safeties, Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as well, Nashawn Wright, Andrew Billings, Tryon Shoyinka, who they traded for the trade deadline and was a situational pass rusher. Some other names, Olamide Zaccheaus, who was a favorite of Caleb as we got through the season, and Ryan Bates, who provided some depth along the offensive line as well. And the other thing I'll ask you as we get through this, and this may be on your list, DJ Moore going to be back with the team because folks are really mad at him the way that game ended against Los Angeles.
Yeah, so just to hit these names on the list, Kevin Byard is still kicking and playing well. He's in his 30s now. Had another Pro Bowl type season. I want to say he led the league in interceptions, or at least was up there really high. This was a defense that gave up yards, but they feasted on turnovers and being able to create turnovers. And so, I think you figure out how to get him and Brisker back. I think Nashawn Wright played well enough that he's just going to outprice himself,
Mm.
and he'll have a much bigger market than the Bears will be able to afford. And then I think with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, that was a mid-season acquisition. I believe he started on their practice squad, and they elevated him a few times and then actually brought him up to the active roster. I think that's one that you wait to see. I think you build out enough depth with some young guys that you can get that type of production. But you mentioned DJ Moore, and he has a $28.5 million cap number for the year, and his actual salary for the year is $23.485 million. So the big question will be, and this is probably the one guy that I didn't write down his dead cap number, because they have 542,000 in dead cap space, so they could take on some dead cap money here if they so chose to. But with the DJ Moore, it's how big of an impact do you expect him to have in the program? And so if you move on from him, obviously Luther Burden really emerged, and then
Rome.
you have Rome Odunze, you have Colston Loveland. So you're going to still be able to get those guys the ball and have more opportunity to get them the ball if DJ Moore isn't there. So you're able to clear space. But if you do not decide to move on and cut bait with him, you probably will need to convert some of that $23 million into a signing bonus to create some space. A guy here, it might be controversial to have this conversation about, but Montez Sweat, the edge guy, being able to convert some of his $20.9 million salary, and his deal features $8.1 million in dead cap if you decided to move on or trade him, whatever the case may be, because his cap number for the year is $25 million. And then another guy for me that I think would be an interesting conversation is Cole Kmet. I know they like to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, but you got to feel like moving forward, Colston Loveland is going to be the guy and will be featured in that offense. And then but having Cole Kmet as your number 2 tight end, and he's making $11.6 million as the cap space that he's counting towards, with only a dead cap hit of $3.2 million. So those will be conversations for the Bears front office to have. And again, Bears fans, I'm not saying that you're cutting these guys, but conversations will be had about the number. Is it a renegotiation, and what that looks like to free up some of this cap space? Because like Ryan said, you are $10 million over the cap.
All right. So the Bears have 7 picks, and they pick 25, 57, 89 in the top 100. So let's do the old game here. Most bang for the buck, and we can do day 1 or day 2 picks here. So let's say there's a world where Caden Proctor slips. You need a left tackle. Ozzie Trapillo got injured. We'll see if his future is at the left side, because they had to sort through that. Braxton Jones, his contract's up. I didn't even mention him. The left tackle they drafted a few years ago. Theo Benedette, I think his contract's up. So if Caden Proctor's there, that's one option. What do you think a little bit about Akeem Mesidor playing opposite Montez Sweat? They're the same age, but then they get after it at about the same rate. No disrespect to Akeem, I'm kidding. He had a great season. Secondary, Avion Terrell out of Clemson. Could that be an option? And then finally, let's say they move on from DJ Moore, and someone like Casey Concepcion is sitting there. Do you want to go back-to-back in terms of second-round pick, Luther Burden, first-round pick for a wide receiver? Which one of those gets you the most excited?
I like the Avion Terrell pick, because I think he gives you the outside corner nickel flex that you're going to need with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and being able to move on from him.
I got one more name. I forgot. One more name I forgot. And this could be a day 2 pick, maybe 57 or 89. Safety, your guy, Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon. That's one more name, so I'll add to the list. So another secondary member based on what happens with the safeties that we talked about earlier potentially leaving.
Yeah, I think they're going to get one of those, if not both of those safeties back. I really do believe that. The Ozzie Trapillo pick for me. They took him in 2, and he was injured. I don't know that they'll be so willing to cut bait with him because, again, we talked about with Caden Proctor, and he's a big man. And I mean, I can only imagine having him and Darnell Wright as
Oof.
bookend tackles. But the other thing with him is you can't be so sure, like we talked about, of kicking him inside, moving him over to right. It was one other name that you threw out there before. Can you give me
Akeem
those names?
Mesidor.
I really like that pick for them, and I don't know where the sweet spot is for Akeem Mesidor.
We'll
I
see.
personally feel like Akeem Mesidor will be a menace as an interior pass rusher. I think that's where he's going to have to live to make his name. I don't foresee him being a dynamic edge rusher at the next level, but I think he will be an absolute menace rushing inside, and I think a Dennis Allen style defense will bring that out.
All right, Bears fans, let us know what you think the biggest need is in the first round or even on day 2 if you want to get crazy. If you like the suggestions I had, if you hated them, let me know. I'll read them in the comments. All right, Jim Moore time. Striker, what we got?
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs?
All right, the Bears won the division in 2025 for the first time since 2018. I think they'll be better in 2026. The issue, Ryan, is this. Detroit's going to be healthy. The Packers are still good, and that's just the NFC North. There's also the NFC West to contend with. And here's the point here. You can win 10 games next year in this conference and miss the playoffs because you're talking about the Rams, the 49ers, the Seahawks. You could talk about the Cowboys, the Commanders, the Eagles. All those teams could be fighting for wild card spots. So you could be the odd man out. This team won the division, as I mentioned. What does 2026 look like in terms of making the playoffs and then deep playoff run for the Bears?
Yeah, I think they'll be right back in contention again, because, again, like we talked about with this group as a whole, this is another year with this coaching staff being intact and them being able to make hay. All of these guys we talked about from their rookie class, they'll now have an offseason of being able to fine-tune their games as an individual, but then coming into a year where they know what to expect in terms of the offense, the system, and whatnot. You see here on the graphic, it said it's the hardest strength of schedule in the NFL for the 2026 season. And when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, they got some winnable games in there, right? And so that's where I'm saying I don't know that these numbers in terms of what the strength of schedule is going to be matches up with what we see on a week-to-week basis or know about these teams that are coming up. But you mentioned this is just going to be a tough division. It really is. And I actually picked the Bears in the preseason to make the playoffs, and I excluded the Packers, in which I know Packers fans crushed me. So hopefully, Bears fans, you had my back. Probably didn't, but cool. Appreciate you nonetheless.
Love you either way.
This
Unconditional love,
this is a tough division, and we'll see what the Vikings' plan is at quarterback and figure out what that's going to be, because if they figure out that spot, then they'll be right back in the conversation as to win the NFC North. So there is a world where the Bears make the playoffs again. I think they have the ability to, from top to bottom. I like what they've done this past offseason. I think they'll continue to do it this offseason to make the necessary changes, but I do think there's a world where they make the playoffs.
Yep. No, I think that's right based on what we've seen. Like I said, I think they're going to be better in 2026. This isn't obviously the Vikings' perfect fix, but Stryker, make a note, because Rand was talking. We'll do a podcast at some point in the not too distant future of some quarterbacks in this current class that could be going to Minnesota, not in the first round, to provide a little competition and maybe taking over for JJ if things don't go great. I'm looking at you, Carson Beck. We'll talk about some of that stuff later, though, because that could be – we'll see. We'll see what works out for like JJ and get them on task. But again, that's the conversation for another time. All right, that's it for this edition of The Perfect Fix. Thanks as always for joining us in the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the pod if you like what we do here. We'll see you guys in the next one.